Are you concerned with your kids' posture now that everyone's at home and isolated more than ever? I'm Dr. Dan with Dr. Pascal here from Lindenwood's Chiropractic. So today we want to go over a few things, especially addressing the issues for posture of kids probably between 10 to 16 is what we're seeing now in terms of questions and concerns that are coming from our patients.
Absolutely. Some of the things we've been in contact with our patients, and when we're talking to them over the phone or doing these telehealth appointments, they're saying that, listen, our teenagers are now spending more time on their phones, they're spending more time in bed, whether it's doing, homework, watching watching YouTube, playing video games, doing social media. I mean, everything is done on a digital device. Yeah. And really in exercise-less or generally motionless type positions, right?
That's right,
yeah.
Totally. And probably now more than ever, our routines are completely out of whack. So now it's either one or both parents are at home, so their routines are shot. You're probably trying to figure out how to do your normal work while the kids are at home, whether they're obviously doing homeschooling and everything else, but also the kids, their routines are completely up in the air. Like we have 3 boys, almost a 16-year-old, 13 and 10, and so for them a typical routine was during the week they would get up, go to school, run around, have their recess, their school, all that stuff, come back from school, do some homework, have dinner, and then off to the kind of the activities, whether it's a practice or game or drum lessons or whatever else. But now they're at home this whole time, and now it's, well, what do I do, right? And if it was up to them, they would probably want to game all day, they'd probably want to watch YouTube or watch TV all day. So now I think for us, we need to kind of set up, let's say, boundaries or routines for them, and all we could do is share maybe what's working for us, and hopefully that can help you in some capacity.
Absolutely. And the reason we want to set up those boundaries is really the biggest reason is the effects of technology, of sort of motionless technology on posture. We know there's a direct correlation, there's a direct link between the amount of time that we spend, we'll say, on a cell phone or on a computer with how bad your spine is going to become. Right. And it's not only pain, it's just a number of different health things that can be associated with that long term. And so our concern is not just the cosmetic aspects of posture, but it's the health effects that it's going to have now, in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, right? And so with this sedentary isolation, there's simply more time on a phone, on a computer, and so we're concerned with stopping the effects of posture deterioration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to go through a few tips, and hopefully those could help. But definitely the number one thing, especially, and I think that would help parents just as much as the kids, is implementing some kind of a routine during the day. So whether it's, and I know even kids a lot of times don't like their routine, but they also like to understand where their boundaries are and what they could do at what time. So whether it's setting up a time like, so you have free time until 9 or 10 o'clock, and then from here 10 to this we do homework, and we're doing this and this, and now we have to go outside and doing this. So for us, what we've tried to do is implement some time where, let's say if they're not moving, to then implement a time where they go outside, whether it's shooting basketballs or taking shots or going outside with the dog or whatever it is. So there's not moving, not moving. And it's kind of like school, right? So when they get to school, yes, they're going in class, but then they have a recess, they have gym class, they have lunch. So that same thing, we want to recreate as much as we can of their day as at school to at home, so that it doesn't, they don't go too crazy and drive us too crazy as well.
Absolutely. And then the times where they are going to be on the computer, their phone, or on a tablet, on a laptop, the idea there is to change the posture as much as possible. We know the most common posture is typically either standing rounded or sitting and kind of rounded. And so we don't want to spend hours on end in those positions because they will deteriorate the posture. And so, ideally if a kid can, while they're on their phone, a laptop, a tablet, on their bed or on the floor, is to almost get on their elbows on their belly with their chest and head up, right? So that would be a fantastic posture to be in. Spend at least an hour a day in that posture. That'll help to undo the effects of that forward rounded position, right? So ideally, if you can sort of incentivize your child or teenager to do so, it would be to constantly shift or change their position every hour, because being in a position like this, or laying on their side with their head twisted for hours on end, is going to have a bad effect for sure.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And then so if they're, let's say the other thing is if they're sitting down, obviously use a pillow underneath the elbows to prop up, let's say their phone or gaming device or whatever they are, so that they could kind of maintain as good of a posture as possible. Now the key thing, especially maybe to look for, maybe we could go over that as well, is, you know, what would that posture look like on a child? Because right now, especially as parents, we are now seeing them during the day probably more so than ever. So now we can also see and maybe kind of notice different things that are going on, especially with their posture. So the first thing definitely is to look for in terms of where the head sits as to the regular part of the body.
Absolutely. So generally we focus on this a lot, and I think you've seen pictures of this, and this is becoming more so common knowledge on the internet. We start to see the shoulders round forward, and then the head that drives forward, so the ear ends up in front of the shoulder. So that's called forward head posture with rounding of the shoulders. That's quite common, we see that, and that's pretty easy to see. The ones that we're not as familiar with is when you look at your child from the front or from the back. We want to look for some imbalances there, because those are signs that there's a spinal problem, could even be something like scoliosis. So Dr. Dan mentioned, now's the time to be able to sort of screen them at home and look for that kind of stuff. And things you'd be looking for: high shoulder. One shoulder sits higher than the other. You know, when they put a shirt on, you know, one side of the shirt sort of slopes down lower than the other. One pocket on their pants is lower than the other. The belt line slopes down. If you're hemming their pants, one pant leg seems to always sit lower than the other. If you see them without a shirt on, one shoulder blade sticks out more than the other, or you see any form of curvature to their spine or rounding onto their back, those are all signs that there's an underlying spinal problem. And so, you know, you definitely want to get it addressed when you can. Even give us a call now so we can talk about things you could do, but those are the kinds of postures that you want to be aware of, whether you wouldn't want them sort of shifted and laying on their side all day.
And obviously for us, posture is always a big thing, and especially obviously for, let's say, adult patients as well. But the reason for us why, especially for kids, it's so important is right now when we're seeing patients that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and they're having major issues right now, but guess what? We know that they did not grow up with gaming for hours a day, or their on their phone for hours. So right now our major concern is, if these kids are having these kind of bad habits right now, what will they look like in 10, 20 years? What kind of problems are they going to have if they don't address some of these posture issues, or more so habits now? So now's the time, if possible, to help them, educate them, teach them on what they can do to help themselves, not only now, but also for later on.
Absolutely, especially those kids. I mean, they're growing right now. Their bones are still, you know, malleable. They can change shape. So it's so important to normalize or get the spine in the best position possible before they hit those growth spurts. So crucial to do that.
So hopefully that could help, or helped you a little bit. If you have any other questions or concerns, you can definitely give us a call here at 474-1159 at the office, or an email, info@linnywoodschiropractic.com. And if you want also a telehealth, assessment or call, we could definitely set that up as well at that number and email as well. So hopefully that could help you. Enjoy the rest of your day.